But if you also like college football, because football ain't just on Sundays, it's also on Saturdays. And depending if you're in the MAC or whatever, it could be on Wednesday, it could be on Thursday, it could be on Friday. Who the hell knows? But college football is almost back, so I think it deserves its own video. From the studios, it is Legomicus Sports NYC, and we recently rebranded this channel to focus more on New York sports. However, in the past, we, under our previous existence, did a lot of content on college sports. And we did a lot of brackets for college basketball. But we also talked a lot about college football. So what we wanted to do today was just divert a little bit from what we ordinarily do and talk a little bit about college football today, because the college football season is coming. At the time we recorded this, we're only about 2.5 weeks from the start of the 2026 season. I know that the start of football is a very exciting time. Of course, here we talk a lot about the New York Giants. Their first preseason game, from my perspective, when I recorded this, is coming up very soon, as in within the next few days. Jets fans, your first preseason game is coming up a little sooner than that, a couple of days from now. Giants fans maybe have a little more to be excited about in general, although I'm not sure either is going to end up truly being excited, but one fan base has a little more to look forward to. But if you also like college football, because football ain't just on Sundays, it's also on Saturdays. And depending if you're in the MAC or whatever, it could be on Wednesday, it could be on Thursday, it could be on Friday. Who the hell knows? But college football is almost back, so I think it deserves its own video. We'll talk about this for a little bit, talk about who we think might end up being some of the favorites in college football this season. So the defending national champions are the Indiana Hoosiers. I'm sure that is a sentence that in regards to college football that you never thought you would say. Maybe in the past you have said that with regards to college basketball. The defending champions are Indiana. Yeah, because Indiana's a basketball school that absolutely dominated its way through the college football playoff and won a national championship last year. And their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, ends up getting drafted number 1. Although, God love him, now he's got to go play for the Raiders, so good luck to him. But his Indiana Hoosiers are still going to be up there, and we'll talk about them more as a contender in a little bit. But Indiana are the defending national champions, so they can never take that away from you, Hoosiers. You are the national champions until somebody else gets it. And hey, who knows? Maybe you can do it again this year. So now there are 138 FBS teams. There used to be 136. Now there are 138. And those 2 new FBS teams this year, one of them, Sacramento State, they're going to play in the MAC, which geographically, that don't make any sense. But does any of it anymore? I mean, you got Cal and Stanford in the ACC. You got Oregon in the Big Ten. None of this makes any sense anymore. So what the hell, Sacramento State? Go play in the MAC. And then North Dakota State, the kings of FCS, who have won 1 million championships at the FCS level. They're going to the Mountain West, and we'll talk about the Mountain West in a second because they are going to look very different this year. And why is that? It's because the Pac-12 is back. They have added a lot of new teams to kind of reconstitute the league. It used to just be Oregon State and Washington State, and let me tell you, I miss the old Pac-12. Watching the old Pac-12 was fun, but conference realignment devoured the Pac-12, but it's back in a manner of speaking. It has added some new teams. So Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, Utah State, Texas State, I believe are the teams. So what do you notice about a lot of those teams that I just checked off going to the Pac-12? Well, a lot of them came from the Mountain West. So the Mountain West, I think, got poached of 5 of their teams, which sucks too because I enjoyed Mountain West football as well. But a lot of them are going to be in the Pac-12 now. So good for them, I guess. But then, the Mountain West had to backfill with some other teams. And one of them, obviously, North Dakota State, who have absolutely nothing left to prove at the FCS level of the sport. So let's talk about potential favorites for the college football championship in 2026. And I want to preface this by saying this is as of the preseason, August 2026. We could be sitting here in December having completely different conversations about who is in the mix and who isn't. And in fact, I expect us to. The teams that I'm going to put up right now, these are the teams that are the 9 highest teams in the odds in terms of being the national champion as of today, the date I recorded this video. And who are they? In alphabetical order, they're Georgia, Indiana, LSU, Miami of Florida. I just need to make that distinction. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Texas A&M. Those are the top 9 teams in the odds as of today. And the way this works is that I would expect one or even several of these teams to drop off and not really be true contenders. And I would expect maybe a few teams that we don't expect to rise into the upper echelons of the sport and contend for a spot in the college football playoff. But you got Georgia there out of the SEC, Indiana, they're the defending champs, even though they had to replace Fernando Mendoza, which I think they did. LSU with Lane Kiffin, that's a whole other story. Miami, a really unpredictable run to the national championship game last year. Notre Dame, they're always considered a favorite, but they haven't actually won it in a long time. Ohio State, they won a few years ago. Oregon, they're always a contender. Texas, we'll see what we get out of Arch Manning. We'll talk about him in a second. And then Texas A&M, the Aggies, actually, one of the top 9 teams in the odds. And then I believe Texas Tech right after them is number 10. So a lot of Texas on the board here as potential champions. And I was looking at some of the movement, looking at Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and a bunch of other teams that are in that upper echelon of what we think the contending teams are going to be going into this season. And I got to say, I'm not even going to try to break this down. The transfer portal at this point, it's absurd. It has gotten ludicrous. Because you'll see like Ohio State losing a couple dozen players and then a couple dozen transferring in. And some of these guys, they transfer every year. And you have teams where a guy has been on 2 or 3 different schools. And it's like, I can't even keep track of it anymore. And I'm not going to try to keep track of it. If you're a fan of a particular team, then go nuts, dig into it all you want. But on the macro level of FBS, I can't keep track of where all these players are going because some of them transfer, it seems like, every year. And you've got dozens of players coming in, dozens of players going out just because of the transfer portal, not to mention graduation or the draft. I mean, there is just a high amount of turnover in college football every year. I can't keep it straight. I'm not going to try to keep it straight, but we'll just see how the results look on the field and take it from there. How about that? So the Big Ten, are they the conference to beat in college football? I would say yes at this point. And the top 2 teams in the odds right now going into this season are Ohio State and Oregon. And they are, I believe, also the top 2 teams in the coaches poll. We don't have the AP poll at the time yet that I've recorded this. But Ohio State and Oregon, Big Ten. So those are the teams to beat. The SEC, they're always going to be in the mix. They're always going to be formidable. The SEC with Georgia, Alabama is a little bit lower. They're like in the teens right now in terms of a preseason ranking. But Alabama, there's a really good chance that they're just going to be there at the end. LSU, a potential contender. Texas A&M, a potential contender. So, what the SEC is going to have their fair share of teams in the college football playoff. But the question is, can they beat the Big Ten? And then you've got the other conferences like the ACC, who had Miami in a championship game last year. And you know what? Indiana was just too good. But Miami acquitted themselves very well in the college football playoff last year. So you would think they'll be a contender in the ACC. And it seems like Clemson, more often than not, is in the mix. And you got a few other ACC teams as well that could potentially contend for a conference championship. And then you look at the Big 12, Texas Tech, as I mentioned, was right off of the top 9 in terms of the odds. So I think they also will be a contender to get to the college football playoff this year. So, last thing we'll talk about here, the Heisman favorites for this year. So if you look at the odds as of today, and I'll have something to say about this in a second. Right now, the Heisman favorite is CJ Carr, the quarterback from Notre Dame. And number 2 right behind him is Arch Manning of Texas. Now, I saw Arch Manning. He was like neck and neck with Carr in the preseason Heisman odds. And I'm just thinking to myself, do we not remember what happened last year? That he was considered the Heisman favorite and it just did not work out. I mean, granted, Texas had a fine season, but I think people put too much expectation on the shoulders of Arch Manning and it just did not work out. And of course, Fernando Mendoza just outshone everybody in college football last season. But, I think there might be some people that have a little bit of hesitation about thinking, Arch Manning could be the top guy in college football this year. Maybe it'll happen. And if it happens, I'll be happy for him. But I think there will be some people that think back to what happened last year. And of course, there were other guys in the Heisman mix last year in the preseason that just did not end up having Heisman caliber seasons, like Cade Klubnik right off the top of my head, or Garrett Nussmeier right off the top of my head. So if you look at a Heisman odds list right now, I guarantee you a couple of those guys are not going to be anywhere near the top of the odds once we get to the halfway point of the season. That's just the way it works. And there will be guys who come along that you don't expect. Again, just the way it works. So please, I implore you, enjoy the 2026 college football season. Maybe we'll have another Big Ten champion. Maybe the SEC will get in there. Maybe some team that none of us expect to be a contender is going to win the whole thing this year. Wouldn't that be nice for the sport? Doesn't often happen, but wouldn't that be nice for the sport? Although I got to tell you, Indiana winning a football championship is about as unexpected as it gets. So, for something like that to happen 2 years in a row, that would be very, very surprising. But enjoy the 2026 college football season. And for more sports content, Lagomicus Sports NYC. Like and subscribe. Follow us on social media. We'll see you soon.